It was another quiet night on the graveyard shift at the gas station. The store was empty, save for the low hum of the refrigerators and the soft buzz of the overhead lights. I was halfway through my shift, restocking shelves, when the door chime rang. A woman entered, clutching the hand of a young boy. They both looked terrified. Her clothes were torn, her face streaked with tears, and the boy clung to her side, his eyes wide with fear. She approached the counter, her voice shaky. "Can I use your phone?" she asked. I nodded, handing her the store phone. As she dialed, I noticed her hands trembling, and the boy glanced around nervously, staying close. I couldn't imagine what they had been through. The woman spoke softly into the phone, her words rushed and urgent. I tried not to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help catching fragments of her conversation. She was desperately trying to reach someone for help. After she hung up, she asked if they could stay in the store for a while. I could see the desperation in her eyes. "Of course," I said. "You can stay as long as you need." I offered them some free drinks and snacks. The woman's face softened a bit, and she thanked me. They settled in a corner, her sipping water, and the boy munching on a candy bar. I kept an eye on them, making sure they felt safe. The night dragged on, and the unease in my stomach grew. I didn't know what they were running from, but it was clear they were fleeing something dangerous. An hour passed, and the door chime rang again, this time, more aggressively. A man stormed in, his face twisted with anger. "There you are," he shouted, making a beeline for the woman and the boy. She shrank back, pulling the boy closer. "Sir, you need to leave," I said, trying to keep my voice steady as I stepped between him and the woman. "Get out of my way," he roared. "She's coming with me." He tried to push past me, but I held my ground. The woman was crying, clutching her son protectively. "Sir, I'm calling the police," I warned, my heart pounding as I reached for the phone. The man's eyes flashed with rage, and he lunged at me, knocking the phone out of my hand. It clattered to the floor, but I managed to grab it and dial 911. "Help! We need police at the gas station on Elm Street," I shouted. The dispatcher assured me that help was on the way, but every second felt like an eternity. The man continued to shout, trying to drag the woman out of the store. I stood in his way, hoping to buy time. The boy was crying, his face buried in his mother's side. Finally, the sirens wailed and 2 officers burst through the door, guns drawn. "Step away from them," one officer commanded. The man hesitated, then raised his hands, his face still contorted with anger. The officers moved quickly, handcuffing him and escorting him out to the squad car. The woman collapsed into a chair, sobbing with relief. The boy held onto her, still frightened but visibly relieved that the man was gone. One of the officers stayed behind to speak with her. She explained that the man was her boyfriend, and she had been trying to escape his abuse. The officer assured her she was safe now, and that they would help her find somewhere to stay. A wave of relief washed over me. The situation had been terrifying, but I was grateful I could help. The woman thanked me repeatedly, tears of gratitude in her eyes. I told her it was no problem, I was just glad she and her son were safe. The police took the man away, and the officer stayed with the woman until a social worker arrived. They arranged for her and her son to stay at a safe house for the night. As they were leaving, the woman turned to me one last time. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. I nodded, watching as they walked out into the night, finally safe from harm. The store was quiet again. The only sounds were the hum of the refrigerators and the buzz of the lights, but everything felt different now. I had faced something terrifying and helped someone in need. The graveyard shift had never felt so important. As the hours passed and the morning light began to filter through the windows, I couldn't stop thinking about the woman and her son. I hoped they would find peace and safety in their new life, and I hoped that, in some small way, I had made a difference. The memory of that night stayed with me, a reminder of the strength it takes to stand up to fear and the power of kindness in the face of darkness. My name is John, and I love taking my family on little adventures. Living in the city can get overwhelming, so sometimes we like to escape to the countryside. One summer, I rented an old farmhouse on Airbnb. It looked perfect: big yard, old charm, and even a pool. The ideal spot to relax and unwind for the weekend. We arrived on a sunny Friday afternoon. My wife, Julian, our two kids, Liam and Zoe, were buzzing with excitement. The farmhouse stood at the end of a long gravel road, surrounded by thick trees. It had a wide porch with creaky wooden steps, and the inside was filled with antique furniture and faded old pictures. It felt like we had stepped back in time. After unpacking, we spent the evening by the pool. The kids splashed around while Julian and I dipped our feet in the cool water, soaking in the tranquility. The air was fresh, and the only sounds were the kids' laughter and the gentle rustling of leaves. As night fell, we set up some lights around the pool and had dinner under the stars. It was perfect, until I heard it. A crunching sound like someone stepping on dry leaves. I glanced around, but it was pitch dark beyond the reach of our lights. Julian noticed my concern. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "I'm sure it's just an animal," she replied, trying to sound calm. But the sounds continued, getting closer. A chill ran down my spine. I told the kids to get out of the pool and head inside. We hurriedly gathered our things and I locked the door behind us. Inside, the house felt safer, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I double-checked all the windows and doors, making sure they were locked tight. Julian and I put the kids to bed, but I kept my phone and a flashlight within arm's reach. Hours passed, and the house was eerily quiet. Just as I started to relax, there was a loud knock at the door. My heart jumped. I grabbed the flashlight and looked through the peephole. A man stood outside in a police uniform. "Open up, it's the police," he called out. I hesitated. Why would the police be here at this hour? Something felt off. "Why are you here?" I asked through the door. "There's been a report of suspicious activity." "Please open the door," he replied. His voice was calm, but there was something unsettling about it, a sharp edge that set off alarms in my mind. I decided to call the local police station to verify his presence. As I dialed, the man knocked again, harder this time. "Open the door," now he shouted, his tone growing aggressive. The dispatcher answered, and I quickly explained the situation. She confirmed my fears the police hadn't sent anyone to our location. She advised me to stay inside, lock everything, and wait for real officers who were on their way. Panic surged. I told Julian to take the kids and hide in one of the bedrooms. From where I stood, I could hear the man trying the door handle. I quickly turned off all the lights and peeked through the curtains. To my horror, I saw more figures moving around outside, lurking in the shadows. And it felt like hours. The man kept banging on the door, demanding we let him in. My phone buzzed. The real police were almost there. Just then, the fake officer started slamming his fists on the windows, trying to force his way in. My breath caught in my throat, praying the glass would hold. Finally, flashing lights filled the driveway. A police car approached, and the figures outside scattered into the woods, disappearing into the darkness. The real officers burst through the front door, checking the area. They found no sign of the imposters, but it was clear we had narrowly escaped something dangerous. The officers assured us we were safe, but strongly suggested we find somewhere else to stay for the night. They explained that, although rare, there were cases of people posing as police officers to gain entry to homes. Their intentions? Unclear, but certainly no good. We packed our bags and headed to a nearby hotel. The kids were scared but safe. Julian and I were shaken but relieved. As we drove away, my mind kept replaying what could have happened if we'd opened that door. It was a terrifying thought. That night changed the way I think about safety. It was a stark reminder to always trust my instincts, verify everything, and never let my guard down. We never found out who those fake cops were or what they wanted, but I'm thankful we made it out unharmed. Our little adventure had turned into a night of terror, but it taught me to stay alert, especially when venturing into unfamiliar territory. When I was younger, I had a strange passion for exploring abandoned places. There was something about the emptiness, the silence, and the lingering past that pulled me in. I loved wandering through forgotten buildings, imagining the lives that once filled them. One place, though, still haunts my memories: the abandoned school in our town. It had been empty for years, shrouded in rumors and ghost stories that only made it more irresistible. People said it was haunted, and my friends and I wanted to see if the stories were true. It was a night that seemed perfect for an adventure. The air was cool, and the sky was overcast, making everything feel even more eerie. We met at my house and packed the essentials: flashlights, snacks, and our phones. There were 4 of us: me, Tom, Lisa, and Sarah. We were all excited but undeniably nervous. As we walked towards the school, we whispered about the strange noises people claimed to hear inside and the shadowy figures spotted in the windows at night. When we reached the school, it was even creepier than we had imagined. The windows were shattered and the doors were boarded up. Vines clung to the walls like skeletal fingers, and the paint was peeling in long, ghostly strips. It looked like the perfect setting for a horror movie. We found a way in through a broken window at the back, each of us climbing in cautiously, trying not to make too much noise. Once inside, we switched on our flashlights, cutting through the suffocating darkness to reveal dusty hallways and rows of rusting lockers. The air was thick with the stench of mold and decay. We decided to stay together, not wanting to get lost in the maze of corridors that seemed to twist and turn endlessly. Our footsteps echoed loudly, every sound amplified in the heavy silence. We started in the main hallway, right outside the principal's office. The door was ajar, hanging awkwardly on its hinges. We pushed it open, revealing a scene of chaos. Papers were scattered everywhere. The desk was overturned, and old trophies were strewn across the floor, covered in dust. It looked like someone had left in a hurry, and I couldn't help but wonder what had happened here. We moved on to the classrooms, each one eerier than the last. Old desks and chairs sat abandoned, some broken, others covered in dust so thick it looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. Books were left open, their pages yellowed and brittle, as if the students had just vanished, leaving everything behind. In one classroom, a chalkboard had strange writing smeared across it, words that were half erased, yet menacing. Tom, always the brave one, laughed it off, saying it was probably just kids messing around, but the unease lingered. Something about that room felt off, as if we were intruding on something that didn't want to be found. As we continued exploring, a loud bang echoed through the empty hallways. We froze, our hearts pounding in our chests. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. We all nodded, too scared to speak. Every instinct told us to leave, but curiosity got the better of us. We followed the sound down a long, dimly lit hallway. The walls were lined with faded photographs of students and teachers, their smiling faces frozen in time. It felt like they were watching us, their eyes following our every move. The hallway led us to the gymnasium. The doors were closed, but strange noises echoed from within, faint and unsettling. Tom took a deep breath and pushed the doors open. The gym was enormous, and our flashlights barely reached the far corners. The floor creaked under our feet as we stepped inside, the sound echoing ominously in the vast space. In the middle of the gym, we saw a figure, standing alone, dressed in old, tattered clothes. Its back was turned to us, shoulders rising and falling as if it were breathing heavily. We stood there, frozen in place, unsure of what to do. Then, the figure slowly turned around, and we saw its face. It was pale and gaunt, with dark, sunken eyes that seemed to stare right through us. Its expression was twisted, almost pleading, yet filled with something darker, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And then, without warning, it let out a piercing scream that echoed through the gym, a sound so chilling it felt like it reached down into our bones. We ran. I don't remember how we got out, whether we bolted down the hallways, scrambled out the window, or just broke through the nearest exit. All I remember is the sheer terror that gripped us, driving us to flee without looking back. We didn't stop running until we were far away from the school, panting and out of breath. None of us spoke, too shaken by what we had just seen. We never went back to that school. The experience haunted us for weeks. We couldn't explain what we saw that night, and we didn't want to try. Our passion for exploring abandoned places was gone, replaced by a fear of what might be lurking in the dark corners of those forgotten spaces. That night taught us that some places are better left undisturbed. The abandoned school still stands, a crumbling monument to whatever haunted past lies within its walls. And for me, that eerie building remains a silent reminder of the horrors that can lurk in the dark. Sometimes it's better not to know what's hiding in the shadows.